Good morning. My name is Charles Kahn. I'm the organizing director at the Strong Economy for All Coalition in New York. Thank you for joining. Today we are launching our Dirty Dozen economic development report that goes over 12, actually a little bit more than 12, you get a couple bonus entries of the worst economic development deals of the past decade in New York. If we went beyond a decade, we would have ended up writing something more akin to, the Odyssey, but we kept it to the past decade. And we want this report to serve as both a cautionary tale, because many of these deals are still active, and every year we're actively doing the same thing over and over again. And we also want this report to really highlight the kind of faults and the failures within our current method of economic development, so that we can be the proper stewards of the public money and really make smart investments going forward that have the intended impact on New Yorkers. And so I won't speak too much. I know you guys didn't come here to hear from me. I'm going to pass it first to the Deputy Majority Leader, Senator Gianaris. Thank you for joining us. Please go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you to everyone involved in shedding light on this important issue. The way we have been doing economic development in this state for at least the past decade has just been abysmal.
Recording in progress.
It's a lot of state subsidy, a lot of state benefits that have flowed to projects that ended up not delivering the hope for job creation, and ends up being just a windfall for entities that don't really need it. Unfortunately, because a lot of this occurs under a cloak of darkness, we don't even have the ability as a public to oversee it and raise objections to these things as they come. So one of the important ways we're doing that, we have legislation. I know a lot of my colleagues are part of this process today, but we have something to ban the non-disclosure agreements that have kept a lot of these deals secret. We have successfully beaten back some programs. The Opportunity Zone program, for example, we have decoupled the state from providing that boondoggle for some developments that don't need that kind of help. But there's a lot more work to do. We have to rethink the way we're doing economic development deals to make sure they are transparent, they are before the public, they are genuinely tied to the benefits the public would receive in ways that the money can be clawed back if those don't materialize. And we got to get away from just giving checks or tax breaks to individual companies. That's gotten a lot of people in trouble, rightfully so. And there's no way to do economic development to be choosing winners and losers individually like that. It's a recipe for disaster. And unfortunately, we've seen too many disasters in this state because of it. So I know there's a lot of people on the agenda. I don't want to take up too much time other than to just come here and lend my support to these efforts and let you know that there's a lot of us here on the inside of the legislature trying to make the kind of change that we need.
Thank you, Senator. And so next we'll go to Senator Krueger. And I did want to highlight that when we're talking about economic development in New York, we're talking about over $10 billion annually in revenues lost and money spent on broken deals. And so this is why it's so important right now when we see rising costs and dropping affordability, that we make sure that all of our investments can be smart. And so I'll kick it over to Senator Liz Krueger.
Thank you very much, Charles, and thank you for allowing me to join you all today. And I'm very proud to be serving with my Deputy Leader, Mike Gianaris, for so many reasons, but I think we are so in tune on this. And the Senate held a hearing in December around the problems of economic development. Actually, many of you, I think, on today also testified at the budget hearings on the economic development issue. So thank you for coming in, backing us, and testifying and educating us. I'd say, number one, we don't even know how much money is going out in economic development deals in the state of New York, because so much of it is done through our tax process, where we pass some kind of law or deal, and then people simply file their taxes, subtracting out everything they believe they no longer have to pay. That's never held up against anything that's done by our economic development agencies. It can be done at the city and state and even federal level. Nobody's holding up anything against each other. Nobody's ever following up to see, did they deliver on what they said they would do, i.e. job creation or actual economic development. And we just keep letting it go on year after year with these mega deals. And thank you for putting them in your paper. So some of the mega deals, the story gets told, but so many of these stories never get told. And so I do believe that the legislature can and must strengthen our laws to make sure that there is required transparency, required databases that cross-check no matter what agency, whether it's an IDA or ESDC or just tax and finance or. And that also, we allow double and triple dipping, which is the other enormous problem. That is why I'm convinced it's more than the $10 billion. I was looking into one 421A building the other day. They had 421A, 80-20 deal, and low-income housing tax credits. I won't get into what all that means right now, but in theory, they triple dipped to build affordable housing in my district. And the units are renting for $5,000 for a studio, $10,000 for a 2-bedroom. You tell me in what world that's affordable housing. And I think the people of New York probably paid for the entire building because it was triple dipping. This is beyond outrageous. And so we need to do many things. I bring up 421A because that's sunsetting soon. And many of us think that's just fine if it does. We can come up with real ways to build affordable housing where the money goes for actual affordable housing. We can spend the money we now currently give away in these mega deals to be used by real New Yorkers who need programs and services and infrastructure that will help us all. And we can stop pretending that we know better who should be the winners and who should be the losers in the business economy. Because every time we give a special deal to somebody, the other folks in the world trying to do something similar are actually put farther behind in the line of being able to accomplish because they didn't get the mega deal. And that's ridiculous. So I have endless reasons we need to start again from scratch on anything we call economic development in the state. And starting out, most importantly, with transparency for everyone to look at it, everyone to be able to go, that's not what they said the deal was. And to get clawbacks in so that if you don't ever deliver, you don't get to keep the money. So thank you so much for the work all of you are doing.
Thank you, Senator Krueger. And next, we're going to go to Pat Garofalo from the Economic Liberties Institute. And Pat is, part of the reason we're all here, right? Pat was the author of the report, and he's going to go over, just a couple of the highlights from the report and why this issue is so important.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I'm Pat Garofalo. I'm Director of State and Local Policy at the American Economic Liberties Project. So I want to say thanks to all the great lawmakers and advocates who came out here today to discuss this. As our report shows, the so-called economic development system in New York is really nothing of the sort. You're probably familiar with some of the examples we laid out here, maybe less familiar with others. Plug Power receiving $4 million from the state per job created. The Buffalo Billion creating a slew of corruption convictions instead of jobs. The Central New York Film Hub being built for $15 million in public money and sold for a single dollar. Amazon receiving hundreds of millions of dollars to run local New York businesses into the ground. And the pharmaceutical manufacturer Medline claiming it needed public money to build a new facility, yet when that money was denied, going ahead and building anyway, basically admitting its ask was a sham. These episodes, I think, are disturbing individually, but when put together, you can see the width and breadth of the problems inherent in the way the state has been doing economic development. And this is surely just the tip of the iceberg. As you heard from the lawmakers who already spoke, there's so much secrecy and sleight of hand built into the system that we're probably missing some of the worst abuses. And that's what we hope the folks really take away from this report. It's just irresponsible to keep plowing public dollars into a system that produces this varied a set of disasters for the public. Far better would be spending this money on the people who make New York great rather than the corporations that are out there looking only for their bottom line. Thanks, and I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have.
Thanks, Pat. And so next we're going to go to the chair on the Committee of Investigations and Government, Senator James Scoofus. And let me just find him. There we go. Go ahead, Senator.
Thanks very much, Charles. And it's great to be with you and the coalition. And as usual, Senators Krueger and Gianaris hit the nail on the head with their remarks. The bottom line here is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And for the last 10 years, I've been in the state legislature, putting together budgets under or with the previous administration. That's exactly what we've done. We appropriate billions of dollars every single year to economic development. And every single year, we see so much of that money go to waste. We've seen people go to jail. And meanwhile, our main streets are struggling to get, a few shekels from the state to thrive and to be supported by. They can't tap into any of these funds. And so one of the important things that we included in our one House Senate budget proposal just last week was language that would finally and independently fully audit every single economic development incentive that is offered by the state. And this will create a new baseline. We do this every single year. The governor puts in money into her executive and before her his executive budget proposal. And then the legislature reappropriates all this money. And we have very little to no real understanding as to whether we are getting returns on investment for these billions of dollars. We have very little to no understanding as to whether the promised jobs are being created by all of these incentives. The Excelsior Jobs Tax Credit Program literally pays businesses to just create jobs. There's no metric, there's no discretion. Just basically, you create a job in New York State, we're gonna pay you. How pathetic and desperate do we have to be as a state to have an economic development system that just blindly and without any sort of scrutiny pays businesses to create a single job? And by the way, small businesses need not apply. They're not eligible for the Excelsior Jobs Tax Credit. And so, we have to be looking at all of these programs. We have to be doing it independently. And only thereafter can we determine, truthfully, what programs are working, which programs are not working. And for those that are not working, spend that money in different ways. And there are lots and lots of proven different ways, especially with human capital, that there is an indisputable return on investment. And so we need to get this audit language into the final budget and finally begin the process of a full, transparent, and real evaluation of our economic development incentives in New York, along with all the other reforms and initiatives that we're trying to get across the finish line, whether it be ESD or through the many other sort of opaque portals that some of this money flow through. So thank you for having me. Look forward to the next 8 days and getting a lot of this done.
Thank you, Senator Scoofus. And so as Senator Scoofus mentioned, there are a lot of different ways that we could be spending this money that we know would be smart and proper investments that would really actually develop our economy, create jobs, and most importantly, help all New Yorkers, not picking winners and losers. And so we have actually two state and national experts on that particular topic. And so up next, I'm gonna bring to the stage Jasmine Gripper, the Executive Director of the Alliance for Quality Education, and Art Rollnick at the University of Minnesota, formerly of the Federal Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. And so I will add Jasmine first.
Thank you for having me, Charles. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. New York State continues to throw money at so-called economic development programs that don't result in jobs and don't result in helping people or our economy. It is time to do real strategic investment, and that means putting money in universal childcare. That means investing in housing opportunities. That means investing in keeping people safe. New York does not need to continue to waste money by giving away billions of dollars to corporations. I can't understand how Kathy Hochul, who was from Buffalo, New York, where a lot of these bad deals took place, will even propose doubling the pot of money for economic development. This is nothing but a giveaway to campaign donors, and it is a waste of taxpayer dollars, and it needs to stop immediately. We need the Senate and the Assembly to reject the governor's proposal and to reinvest that money in communities and invest in New York having a plan to implement universal childcare. Thank you.
Go ahead, Art.
It's Art Rollnick here, formerly with the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, now at the University of Minnesota. I'm going to take you back about 20 years when the former governor of the state of Minnesota, Al Quie, and the former mayor of Minneapolis, Don Fraser, asked me to look at, take an economic look at investing in early childhood education. Took a look at the longitudinal research, the brain development research. The bottom line was very clear. It's overwhelming. We're way under investing in high quality early childhood education for our most at-risk children. What we found is when children, especially children who are born into poverty, if they have high quality early education, start school already, they're less likely to need special ed. They're less likely to be retained in the grade. They're more likely to be literate by the 6th grade, graduate high school, get a job, pay taxes, stay off welfare, and the crime rate went down compared to a control group, 50%. These are enormous benefits. We took an economic lens to it. We asked the question that most business people and economists would ask: what was the return on that investment? We found an 18% inflation adjusted return compared to, I want you to think about early childhood development as economic development compared to the typical way that many states, not just New York, spend public money subsidizing these corporations to do what they would have done anyways, or maybe they shouldn't have done. You won't find a better return. It won't even be close. And so I would argue I did back in 20 years ago, and I've been all over the country on this issue, that this is a great investment. The most recent research shows that these children, when they became adults, were less likely were less likely to have heart disease, less likely to have problems with diabetes, and more likely to have better mental health. And now we have data on children of the children who were in this program, and the children of the children were more likely to graduate high school, go to VOTEC, and go to college. This is real economic development, investing in human capital, critical for your economy, for the national economy. This is how you should invest your economic development dollars first, before you give a dime to a specific company to create jobs that they would do anyways. Thank you for this opportunity to make the case for these kids.
Thanks, Art. And I did, also want to add that in addition to all of the great impacts that, having an investment in universal childcare would have on our children, it also creates tens of thousands of good paying jobs across the state, something that New York could really use. And so next, I'm going to, I think, Art and Jasmine talked about a program that we know has really good return on investment. And I think part of the issue that we see with the current economic development program is it's really hard to tell what, if anything, the program does, because so much of the data that we have is opaque. And so I'm going to bring forward kind of two of the folks in the state leading on kind of fixing that issue. And so first I'll add Senator Comrie, and then I'm also going to, after Senator Comrie will be Ron Deutsch, the Executive Director of New Yorkers for Fiscal Fairness. Go ahead, Senator Comrie.
Thank you, Charles, and good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to support everything that my colleague said earlier and everything that the advocates are saying. It's important that we increase the ability of the public to understand and for everyone to understand exactly what we're spending our public dollars on and how the state is doing that. So I have three bills. My first bill is a database of deals bill, Senate 5711A, which would push force the Empire State Development to improve its ability and transparency in the database of deals that they're already supposed to be reporting to us on a state level. It would require them to report new information related to the number of new jobs filled by MWBEs and whether those jobs are full, part-time, or contract jobs. Would require them to provide information on all their active programs and on the amount of benefits captured or recaptured or canceled. The current database only includes benefits awarded since 2018. So we need to make sure that we are making them adopt a comprehensive database of deals requirements to deliver the most up-to-date information so that we can ensure that we get the best out of our economic development investments. We are working with the Assembly in this legislation, and we hope that this legislation will be signed by the governor this year. We also have in legislation, Senate Bill 4031A, pushing to ask for the major transportation and utility and other projects to be given better notice to the legislators that these projects or upgrades that are happening within their particular district, so that they can get more of an opportunity to opine on it and to also give some feedback on whether or not these deals are actually good for their communities. And we're also working on a third bill, the Senate Bill 2940, mandating the Urban Development Authority to give public more time to evaluate these proposed economic development projects. We are going to continue to utilize our committee and the entire Senate to do more to ensure that New York State government is more transparent, it's more accessible to the public, and it's making it a lot easier to understand and interpret so that we can have an equitable system that puts New Yorkers at the center of the decision-making process now, to ensure that these economic development deals are ones that actually truly benefit the state and not just individuals. So we look forward to continuing to take any feedback and any other ideas so that we can bring them into legislation so that we can improve the quality of state to do deals that are truly relevant and not just deals that are taking care of specific individual interests. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my bill with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Comrie. And I know that I said we were going to go to Ron Deutsch next, but we've also been joined by Senator Brad Hoylman. I know he's working on a tight timeline, so we're actually going to go to Senator Hoylman next. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you, Strong Economy for All. Thanks for this report. Really appreciate it to shine a light on these projects. Although I have to say I'm a little disappointed. I'm disappointed because I represent the Senate district that has projects 11 and 12, which is the Penn Station redevelopment and the Hudson Yards development. I demand a recount because I think they're actually number 1 and number 2 in this report. Let me just say about the Penn Station redevelopment, we're talking 18 million square feet of new commercial office space. That's larger than Hudson Yards. We're talking about 10 buildings, 8 of them which could be super talls, all subsidized by the state of New York. And we're talking about the fact that so far we have no transparency, few details, very little in the way of planning. Governor Hochul inherited this project, let's be clear, from her predecessor, which was made in a backroom deal, although voted on by the legislature. I'm proud to say I have voted against this project every step of the way. We should not move forward on the Penn Station redevelopment without clarity from the MTA, from ESD about the details of this plan, how much it's going to cost taxpayers if the commercial development does not come to pass, and when we can expect to see a new Penn Station and what that will look like. I appreciate Governor Hochul taking the initiative on redirecting this project to Penn Station rather than the commercial development. But I'm pledging here to work with her and my colleagues, Senator Krueger and Senator Jackson, in particular, along with Senator Comrie, to make sure we get the answers, because the public, the taxpayers, shouldn't be on the hook for private development, particularly when we need affordable and supported housing in and around Midtown, when we have a homelessness crisis, a crisis of folks who are dealing with mental illness and addiction. If you've walked in the neighborhood of Penn Station, you know exactly what I mean. So we have so many social services needs, and we need to address those moving forward. So thank you so much. Look forward to continuing the advocacy with my colleagues to ensure greater transparency around economic development projects, which will benefit everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Wellman. And so we're gonna keep going with speakers, but I didn't want to forget about Zach Williams' question. And so Zach, if you want to come off mute and ask that question, please go ahead. And then from there, we'll go to the rest of the speakers and then answer the rest of the questions at the end.
Thank you so much. I was hoping Senator Krueger could answer this, but certainly any of the lawmakers are welcome to chime in. You can hear me okay, right, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so the state spends billions and billions of dollars on economic development programs of questionable value. What are a few examples of those in the executive budget proposal? And how much money do you think could really be reallocated to childcare or other social spending in the state budget due April 1st, given all this opacity of state economic development spending in general?
So it's an excellent question, which I do not have a great answer for. There's not a lot of lined out economic development proposals within the governor's budget. There are lots of mysteries still to be dug into. Senator Brad Hoylman just talked about one of the largest, the Penn Station redevelopment deal, which, you know, is sort of a proposal under one name, redoing Penn Station, which I don't think anyone disagrees with. We want a new Penn Station. We need a new Penn Station. But that proposal seems to have grown, you know, to be a 5 or 6 block radius of all kinds of different things, where we don't know how much the state would be giving up in tax dollars, how much the city would not even get a choice about giving up in tax dollars, who would be getting that money and why. We have a rumor of some kind of deal for rebuilding the Buffalo Bills Stadium in Buffalo. I've read rumors as high as the NFL team wants the whole thing covered by state and county, which I believe is up to $1.4 billion. I've heard numbers, you know, down around 1 billion. I actually have no idea. If any of you know, let me know. There are categories within the budget language that seem to allow for new proposals. There is, of course, as I said, through ESDC and through tax and finance, ways to approve tax exemptions and credits in a way that they don't need to be lined out in the budget or ever voted on by the legislature. I will just cite as one example, and it's controversial because some people really like this program, the Brownfields program, which has a series of different tax credits and exemptions based on whether you are cleaning up the land or whether you were building something on it and what you are building. We have amended that bill several times in its past because it was seen as so overly generous and being exploited by developers. I think some people still question why we would continue that program without major changes. And other people think that it's doing what it needs to be doing. And so that's another reason why I feel what is critical is transparency, so that we get to take a look at these deals before they are made and before they are approved, so that experts can say, well, here's why this one actually is reasonable, Liz, even though you didn't know that. Or here's why this one's really terrible, Liz, and you need to know that. So because of how we've set it up in this state, I don't think anybody can give you a full and complete answer to the question.
Thank you, Senator. And so now we're finally going to actually make it to the Director of New Yorkers for Fiscal Fairness, Ron Deutsch. Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Charles. And thank you to all the members of the Senate and Assembly who are on this call. You're doing incredible work, and we really appreciate what you've been pushing for. And also to our colleagues on the call and those who are not, like Reinvent Albany, that have been working on these issues for a very long time, especially in terms of transparency and accountability. I know I've been working on economic development reform for, dare I say, 25 years now. And I can't help but wonder, how many failed programs, scandals, indictments, and botched deals it will take for New York to begin to really fix this broken system that we have. We heard a lot of great ideas. The Senate has really good proposals in their one-house budget, Senator Comrie's database of deals, Senator Scoofus's audit of ESDC programs. We also, one of the things we didn't talk about is restoring the comptroller's audit authority. In 2011, then Governor Cuomo took away that audit authority, and one has to wonder why, right? Because he doesn't want somebody looking over his shoulder, basically saying that these are bad deals. They wanted to move them forward, and the opaqueness of them all benefited them, quite frankly. So what we need to do is restore the comptroller's audit authority to pre-2011 levels. And there are proposals to do that. And we really need to make sure that those are included in the final budget. I mean, realistically, the comptroller is the state's duly elected fiscal watchdog. The comptroller should have the ability to look at these contracts before they go out the door. Had that happened, we could have avoided largely the Buffalo Billion scandal that occurred and sent numerous people to jail. So it's really incumbent on us to make sure that in this final budget that we have these transparency and accountability measures put in place. Because if we don't, we're just going to continue to go down this same broken, pothole-filled road when we don't have to. So thank you.
Thanks, Ron. And as you heard, our current economic development program is often better at creating indictments than it does jobs. It does that to the tune of $10 billion every year. And so we're about to wrap up. We've got 2 speakers left. I'm going to bring them up at the same time. First, we're going to have independent business owner John Scheib. And then to batting cleanup, we'll have Greg Leroy, the director of Good Jobs, first. Go ahead, John.
Thanks. I just had to unmute. I'll just be 2 minutes max. So look, $3 billion in support payments from New York's video lottery terminals have not worked after 20 years. Attendance is down by 90% at most tracks from their heyday when racing did work. And this is kind of critical because live betting is where the states and the tracks make the largest percentage of the wagering dollar. The Gaming Commission reports just $15 million in wagering taxes and fees paid by all 11 tracks in the state in their last report pre-pandemic. That same year, New York State paid $15 million to regulate racing. So in our calculation, that nets to zero for New York. Yet horse racing has a clear constitutional mandate to provide a reasonable revenue in support of government, which it does not. So in a complete reversal of logic, New York directs $230 million a year to this private gambling industry instead of demanding the kinds of revenues that casinos and lotteries pay. The jobs and economic impact numbers used to justify this have never been verified by the state. But that aside, why is horse racing not subject to the same market conditions that hundreds of thousands of other businesses like mine here have to live by? Racing isn't a public charity. It needs to support itself. Just being a financial guy, seeing New York invest millions specifically in the breeding of extremely valuable racehorses and then investing millions in the purses they die chasing on the tracks. These two investments are clearly at cross purposes just from a financial standpoint. So ready to answer any questions or talk about this in more detail if anybody would like, but obviously we feel like it's a deal that's gone sour for years and just continues.
Thanks, John. Go ahead, Greg.
Thanks, Charles, and thanks for everybody for coming today. I just want to congratulate all of the advocates and experts who have been working together so tenaciously for so long in New York State, and to be joined by experts like Art Rollnick from Minnesota, and to the legislators who have heeded them and come up with all these great, very responsive proposals. I'm heartened by the idea of starting from scratch and using disclosure and using clawbacks and all those kind of things. That's what I first started publishing on 28 years ago. And sponsoring Good Jobs New York for 16 years there to make headway, at least locally in New York City, on some of these issues. For the journalists, I'll tell you, there's no state that has as many engaged nonprofit advocates right now on economic development reform than New York. And no state has as many elected legislators who can speak as knowledgeably as those we've heard this morning about the needs for reform and the better uses of the money. We work nationally, and I'll tell you, there's no other state that's more cranked up, both among the nonprofit world and the elected legislative advocates world. And frankly, no state needs it more. No state spends more money on mega deals than New York. We've documented that in our mega deals database. These are individual deals getting hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars for single individual projects. Buffalo billion in projects like Plug Power, obviously the high profile ones, but the state has done dozens of deals like that over the years. We think it's a measure of corruption. It's a measure of special interest capture, and just gross evidence when you pair that together with the fact that upstate New York's economic performance ranks right down there with Mississippi for the last 35 or 40 years. Very strong evidence that it's time for Plan B in New York State. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. And so I do want to reopen it for questions that folks may have. As you've heard, and as you've probably heard for the past decade, New York's economic development program is broken. It's not good at creating good jobs. It's not good at tracking the money that goes out the door. And instead of having $10 billion in investments that all New Yorkers can benefit from, we have $10 billion that in many ways seems to just evaporate every year. And so I do want to take a second to thank everyone for joining. And if there are any questions, please feel free from the media, please feel free to come off mute and ask those questions.
Hi, this is Tim Canales from Syracuse. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about the kind of the chip fab sites. You cited White Pine and I think the site in Batavia as problematic. I know that the state and some of the people in the Albany area would say that Global Foundries has been a big success. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, I'll pass that one over to Pat.
Yeah, totally. So I think the problem there is that there's lots of money all over the country chasing these semiconductor firms. They're very expensive in terms of, these deals are very expensive in terms of jobs created. But the other problem is that the states are really being played off against each other. And I think in the instance of the two sites we mentioned in the report, New York is basically the stalking horse for other states that are giving billions of dollars to these semiconductor firms. I'm relatively skeptical that it would be worthwhile for the state to bring a semiconductor firm in there. It would require several billions of dollars in a deal that wouldn't pay off. But the existence of those states also means that New York, that also means that the companies play off other states against New York, if that makes sense. They go and say, well, Ohio, if you don't give us $2 billion for a semiconductor plant, we'll go to New York. Well, Texas, if you don't give us $2 billion for a semiconductor plant, we'll go to New York. So New York is not only setting itself up to make a bad individual deal, but is also contributing to a much larger problem, which is this race to the bottom amongst the states.
I would just add about Global Foundries, don't forget the original deal was $1.2 billion for 1,200 jobs, which equals $1 million per job, which means that project is a massive loser for New York taxpayers. There's no way the average worker at that plant is going to pay $1 million more in state and local taxes than public services they consume over their working lifetime. That's a huge, massive loser for the state treasury.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? All right, well.
It's like Zach's hands up.
Zach's, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Just a question for Senator Gianaris, if he's still on, or any of the other legislators. You know, the state budget deadline is coming up. How big of a priority is making some of these changes to economic development programs?
It's a priority for our conference to get as many of them done as possible, if not all of them. I know it's a priority for myself and Senator Krueger. I fully support her and Senator Harmon regarding the Penn Station boondoggle that has been proposed already, and we need to do it. And working with Senator Scoofus to have more transparency in government overall is a major priority for us. So I've spoken with some of the members that are on this Zoom, and we're going to do everything we can to increase the level of transparency in the state to make sure that our public dollars are being spent in the best way possible.
I got on a little late also, so I completely agree with Senator Connery. Apparently, Senator Gianaris did have to jump off. I'm seeing the note there in chat. I will just highlight to press, when you look at our one house budget, people always just go and look at the numbers and the dollars. I get it. But I actually believe that the changes we proposed in the Article 7 language of the budget is about the most dramatic that any legislative body has proposed changing in many, many years, not just direct economic development, but all the things that tie into it. So under the Cuomo administration, those of us who've been around a while will remember, he undid so many of the transparencies and protections that were supposed to be built in. He took the controller out of the audit role in a variety of places so that we could count on the controller's office to let us know what things were costing or raise questions. And so in our language, we put that back. We put back in that the legislature are voting members of the Public Authorities Control Board. I don't know how many people remember that issue, where after a scandal involving the governor's decisions about large sums of capital money, somehow he got the legislature to actually let themselves be removed from the voting process of the PACB. And if you're talking economic development mega deals, you need to be putting the legislature back into the decision-making on votes on exactly those kinds of deals. So I think that's another issue that didn't get touched on today, but is crucial if you are asking the hard questions about how is New York State's money spent and why. And so much of it, of course, is technically off budget in any obvious line in the budget way. So there's lots of real meat in the Article 7 changes that we made and that we are committing to try to get done in the final deal.
Thanks, Senator. Are there any other senators who'd like to comment? Otherwise, I'll go to Megan from Politico.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned the Bills Stadium. Is, and anyone can weigh on this, is the Senate likely to support what could be a $1 billion investment into the Bills?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. I heard something about Buffalo Bills, but I didn't hear the full question.
Hi, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned the Bills Stadium. Is the Senate likely to support what could be a $1 billion investment?
The Senate has not conferenced this issue, so I do not have a way to know the answer to that. Because so far, there is no proposal on the table, just rumors.
Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. You can find the report at the Economic Liberties. You can also find the report at hedgeclippers.org. I'll make sure that all the folks that joined the call also get the link for this report. Thanks again. senators, for your time and your efforts, and look forward to getting it done this year in the budget with you.